Good evening, everyone. We'd like to call this meeting of the Richmond Planning Commission to order. First order of business is the roll call of commissioners.
Good evening. Chair Harris, or Vice Chair Harrison,
Present.
Commissioner Brubaker,
Here.
Commissioner He,
Here.
Commissioner Timmons,
Here.
Commissioner Golovitz.
Here.
And we'll just note for the record, Commissioner Argual is absent.
Okay. Next item is the consent calendar. I don't believe we have any consent calendar items tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We also have the staff introduce themselves.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a request that the staff introduce themselves so that the audience is also familiar with your names.
Oh, sure. I'm Lena Velasco. I'm the Director of Community Development, and I'm filling in this evening for Hector Rojas, our Planning Manager, who is on vacation. And with that, I'll pass it over to Matt.
Thank you, Lena. My name's Matt Newbaumer, one of the new planners here in the Community Development Department at the City of Richmond. I've been with the city for almost 2 months now, really excited to be here, and look forward to working with you all going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Welcome aboard.
Pam, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, commissioners, and my name is Pam Lee. I am from the City Attorney's Office, and I'm glad to be here with you today via Zoom.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think that's everybody. So we'll go on to the next item is the Brown Act, which is public forum, which is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda, something different than the 3 items we have on our agenda. This is their chance to either, if you turned in a speaker slip to talk about something not on the agenda, now's the time to do that, or if staff has any hands raised on our Zoom link. So Lena, are there any Brown Act?
We currently don't have any speaker cards for anybody in the room, and so if you're joining us by Zoom, if you could raise your hand or press *9, and we can give you, okay, so we do have 1 speaker.
Okay. They could introduce them. They have 2 minutes, is that correct?
Oh, they just lowered their hand.
Probably
so-
we're wanting to speak on something on the agenda.
On an item,
Yeah.
correct. Okay, so no speakers for the Brown Act.
Okay, then we're through that item. Next is the new items. Number 1 is PLN 22-84 Homewood Suites Hotel. Director Asquith, can you?
Yeah, so if we could, that one is a holdover. So the item is being requested to be held over for the June 20th meeting.
Do we need a motion to continue it, or does it just happen?
Yeah, let's just do a motion.
Do we have a motion to continue this item to June 20th?
I move. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move this item, Homewood Suites, to the June 20th meeting. Do we need a roll call vote, or can we just do hand?
You could do with hands.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries on that one. The next item is number 2, PLN 23-309, the Bay Hills Community Church. And this is a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit, lot line adjustment, and design review for a proposed demolition of an existing church and construction of a new 33,700 square foot church with a sanctuary office, parking and landscaping, and operation of a community assembly use. It's located on Hilltop Drive, and at this point, I'll ask for a staff report.
Okay, good evening. So our contract planners from MIG will be doing, we have Virginia Morgan and Shauna will be doing the presentation, are available to answer any questions.
Okay, good evening, Commission. Again, my name is Virginia Morgan. I'm here tonight presenting on the Bay Hills Community Church project at 4555 Hilltop Drive. We have a presentation available. If you could just let me know when you can see that.
I don't need to catch that.
See it now.
We can see.
Okay.
Good.
The recommended action for today's meeting is to review the project and to approve the design review permit, conditional use permit, and lot line adjustment for PLN 23309 and PLN 24149. The site is currently 5.75 acres. The applicant is requesting approval for a lot line adjustment. Upon approval, the total parcel area would be 4.9 acres across a single parcel. The parcel fronts Hilltop Drive to the south and abuts an undeveloped lot to the north. The site is developed with an existing church and parking area with natural landscaping to the north. The site is zoned RL2 for single-family, low-density residential. The project is adjacent to the Hilltop Bayview neighborhood. The properties to the east and west are developed with sanctuaries, and the surrounding area is primarily residential. The area to the south of Hilltop Drive is unincorporated Contra Costa County. The existing structure has a similar setback as the adjacent properties, but currently includes no screening of the parking area from the road. There's minimal landscaping at the front of the structure, but none within the parking area itself. The site is currently developed with a 13,600 square foot church and parking lot. The project proposes demolishing the existing church and building a new parking lot with a new church structure behind the lot. The site plan here shows element number 1 in red, which is the footprint of the existing church to be demolished. Element number 2 is the proposed structure, which would be approximately 33,700 square feet. And number 3 are the existing curb cuts that would be used as the entrance and exits for the parking area. The proposed building would be a sprung tension fabric structure, which is a manufactured aluminum structure supporting a fabric membrane. The exterior is proposed in a 3-tone palette, including brownstone red, bayberry green, and sandstone. The elevation from the east demonstrates the gradual arch shape of the building and shows a portion of the roof which projects above the maximum allowed height in this zone. Per RMC code on exceptions to height limitations, projections above the maximum height may be allowed with the approval of a conditional use permit. The elevation from the south shows the front of the building where a low masonry retaining wall is shown. The retaining wall would wrap around the west and rear of the building. A welcome plaza area is proposed as the main entry with site furniture including 2 planter boxes, 8 benches, and the required short and long-term bicycle parking. The plaza includes pervious pavers, which cover the main entrance and curbing, and continue down onto the parking area to create a visually distinct plaza area. These pavers at the parking area would be on grade and would allow for traffic flow through this area. The proposed entrance area includes decorative elements such as exposed beams and a metal trellis, and a floor-to-ceiling stained glass window effect created using colored film. Didn't show up. The project proposes a total of 167 parking spaces. A maximum of 108 private spaces are allowed, and the remaining 59 spaces will be shared for public use. Shared spaces will include signage, which explains parking lot rules, and that shared spaces are available on a first-come, first-served basis. And I apologize, my color coding did not show up here. The outer western line of parking stalls, as well as the line of parking stalls along Hilltop Drive, are all those 59 shared spaces. The project proposes, the proposed landscaping includes adding 13,242 square feet of landscaping to the property. Landscaping exceeds the minimum 10% requirement within the parking area with roughly 15% landscaped area. The project proposes removing 19 trees from within the footprint of the new church and proposes adding 66 new trees in and around the parking area where the minimum required per space would be 33 total. Landscape elements also include a biofiltration area for stormwater retention, 5 landscaped parking islands, and plantings to create screening of the parking area from the street and adjacent lot lines, as well as the refuse area. Added landscaping will include a mix of native and non-native plantings. The project was brought to a design review board study session on February 28th. The design review board recommended the project for a design review permit approval on May 8th with 4 additional conditions of approval. One of these is to require a minimum of 15-gallon trees be used for screening of the parking area. The board also recommended that the exterior color palette be changed from the reddish color to a more neutral dark taupe. The board recommended that screening of all exterior mechanical equipment be compatible in design with the rest of the structure, and that the left planter box at the main entrance include only low plantings rather than the cork oak to preserve the view to the decorative welcome plaza. The project is compatible with all zoning standards, including specific standards for community assembly, such as hours of operation and limitations on outdoor activity near residential use. The project is exempt from CEQA as an infill development project, as the project area is less than 5 acres, surrounded by primarily urban uses. This exemption is supported by the submitted technical reports, including analysis on air quality, water quality, noise, and biological resources, and a historic resource evaluation. The historic resource evaluation demonstrated that although the existing structure is more than 50 years old, it is not considered a historic resource. The applicant engaged in 3 community meetings, with the Hilltop Green Homeowners Association, the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, as well as one on-site at the Bay Hills Church. In addition, there was 1 public comment about the degree of soundproofing of the proposed structure, to which the applicant responded directly. The required findings for the design review board are indicated here, were met by the design review board, and as noted, the board recommended the design review permit be approved by the commission. Findings are also required for a conditional use permit for the proposed community assembly use and for the projection of the roof above the maximum allowed height. They are met as follows. The project site has a general plan land use designation of low-density residential, which supports mixed-use development at neighborhood nodes. The proposed structure, although taller than adjacent structures, is generally consistent with the footprint of neighboring sites with similar uses. Further, the setback of the structure from the road allows for greater privacy, and the project would be subject to specific operational standards for community assembly. The proposed use would not create nuisances through regular activity, as further documented by the submitted noise study, and an added condition of approval is recommended to ensure that all exterior lighting be shielded to avoid excess glare. The project conforms to the standards set out by Article 15 with the approval of conditional use permit and additional conditions of approval that ensure compliance with parking, lighting, and noise standards, among others. The existing structure is sited within less than 1 mile from a major highway, and existing utilities would be updated to support the expansion. Findings as follows are required for the approval of a lot line adjustment. The site complies with all development standards in the RL2 zone, and no overlay zoning districts or specific plans apply. The lot line adjustment is consistent with the general plans through goals such as LU 1.3, which encourages the upgrade and expansion of community facilities. Lastly, the proposed adjustment is between 2 parcels and would not result in any additional parcels. Lastly, findings are required for the approval of the required transportation demand management plan. The proposed trip measures, such as designated passenger loading zones, improving pedestrian connections, and long and short-term bicycle parking, are mostly feasible and appropriate for the project because the site operates on Sundays, primarily at off-peak hours, and with limited connection to public transportation. The proposed trip measures add up to a potential reduction of up to 17.1%. Reduction of vehicle miles traveled. While this measurement may not represent 15% lower than the average single occupancy vehicle trip generation rate, it does have the potential to bring the project's average VMT below the average citywide VMT per the stated goal in the Richmond Code. As noted, planning staff has recommended the following conditions of approval. That the applicant is subject to all lighting, noise, and performance standards. The applicant be subject to the 1% public art requirement. That street trees be maintained within the site triangle. Outdoor activity be restricted to 50 feet from any residential use. That uplighting be restricted in the bird collision zone. Landscaping in the parking area is subject to dimensional requirements. Parking spaces not designated as EV ready must be EV capable. The project is subject to parking and loading standards, including maintaining a designated passenger loading zone. That hours are limited to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. And as noted, the design review board's recommended conditions of approval. Again, staff recommends that the board approve PLN 23309, PLN 24149 for a conditional use permit, design review permit, and lot line adjustment. Are there any questions from the board?
Does anybody have any questions for staff at this time? While we're at that, I'll open the public hearing, since I think I forgot to do that earlier. Any questions of staff?
I have several.
Okay, go ahead.
So, and I don't know if I asked this, you as staff or Lena as staff, but I was curious about the lot line adjustment. The acreage of the lot is now less than 5 acres, and I noticed that alleviates some of the need to do CEQA, so that was interesting. What happens to the other, so it's adjusted from what to what? What is the total acreage of the site, and what is it 2 lots now when this adjustment happens?
So initially, the project is across 2 parcels, and the adjustment, both parcels are owned by the Bay Hills Community Church. So essentially, the lot line adjustment, ensures that the structure doesn't straddle any lot line.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is that other parcel then downhill? Is it located behind the proposed location of the church, and it's empty? Is that right?
Yeah, so I can show you on the slide if it's easier. But essentially, yes, the north parcel would be that smaller parcel, which is to the rear of the proposed project.
Okay, and what is that zoned? Is that also zoned R?
RL2 for low-density residential, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, I didn't really hear, but there is a mention of screening, parking lot screening. Does that mean a fence?
No, so that's referring to the plantings. So those, one of the recommendations is at least 15 gallons for trees planted there, but there's proposed plantings along the landscaped area between the Hilltop Drive and the parking area.
So there is not a proposed fence?
Correct.
And this might be for Lena, if there is to be a fence in the future, they would have to adhere to the underlying zoning regulation for fencing for residential, right? So I don't know what would happen if they wanted to come back and do a fence. It's a very large site to anticipate a fence there. So what if there was to be a fence, what would be the regulations? It couldn't be 6 feet high, is that right?
So which parcel are we talking about?
The parcel along Hilltop Drive, the parking lot
At the church?
currently has landscape screening, and I'm just wondering what would happen if the applicant wanted to do a fence in the future.
I can look at our regulations.
All right, I was just wondering that. I mean, I would like to say that it's, well, I don't know. Yeah, it's a large parking lot, and that would be a lot of fence, so I'm not a fan of that idea. I just want to make sure that they're not proposing a fence. In terms of the landscape buffer, does that include, you said street trees? Is that actually street trees in the sidewalk, or is it street trees on the property next to the sidewalk?
Sorry, yes, not officially street trees. It's all within the property line, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Sidewalk accessibility, was that reviewed? it doesn't look like there's a sidewalk access to the church from the sidewalk on Hilltop.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
There is one or there is not one?
There's not a sidewalk in the site plan.
There's no connection, yeah.
What is shared parking? What does that actually mean?
So what that means is that the 59 indicated spaces be indicated with signage, specific signage stating that it's shared parking. It's just that any other neighborhood use, individual, whoever wants to use it could use it.
Okay.
Yeah, publicly available as opposed to the private parking for the church in a separate.
And would that be signed differently, or how do people know that it's shared or not shared?
Yeah, my understanding is that the applicant intends to have different signage in different sections.
And that's presumably because of the TDM measures, I guess, or I don't know why that would be.
Yeah, so there's a maximum parking allowance for the site, and were they to want all of that parking to be private, they would need to pursue an additional conditional use permit.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
And Commissioner Brubaker, I can address your question about the fencing. So if they are in the residential zone, they will be limited to 4 feet in height. However, they can seek an exception to that height limit up to 6 feet through a zoning administrator approval.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff before we open it to the public?
Yeah, I have several as well. Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for the presentation. So going back to the lot line adjustment question, can you verify if the eastern part of the parking lot is not a separate parcel on its own? I might be wrong, but I checked the APN number, and it's 426-330-009. Has that been already adjusted or combined into the existing parcel, or does it still live as a separate parcel?
So my understanding from the lot line adjustment documents is that it was actually two portions of a single parcel, although they have separate APN numbers. And so, yeah.
Okay, so, and there will be two resulting parcels.
Correct. So starting with 2 and remaining 2.
Okay. Let's see. So there are 2 vehicular entries into the parking lot in the proposed site plan. Do they match up with the existing curb cuts?
Yes, there's no changes proposed to the curb cuts.
Okay. And I saw that one of the conditions to approval is to limit the driveways to a maximum of 20 feet if it's two-way and 10 feet if it's one-way. That feels kind of tight from what I've seen and the neighborhoods I've worked on. I know the goal is to, for traffic calming, but I was wondering, since we're not necessarily limited in space, and I know the applicant is proposing a 24-foot wide drive aisles, if that's permitted, or if it's something in the city code, municipal code.
Yeah, so that dimension actually comes from the RL2, the zoning requirements for parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a EV-ready space would be a parking stall with a charger installed?
Correct.
Okay. And lastly, this might be...
It doesn't sound right. EV ready? It sounds to me like it means it's wired so that they could put a charger there, but there is no charger there currently.
So My understanding is that EV ready essentially means ready for use. You can plug in. There's equipment there available, and EV capable is sort of a future
Okay.
could be set up with that equipment.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, this might be a question for the applicant. Could you walk me through, how you arrive at the roof design, and including the slope, which is, I think, 5.8 to 12, which is on the steeper side, and just like the intentions and inspirations from that design?
And we can have the applicant do that when they come up to speak. So
Right,
we'll
during
make
their
sure-
presentation.
Okay,
So we'll make sure that gets covered.
cool. Sorry, one more question. Going back to the lot line adjustment, CEQA, was there a slope analysis done on site? Because it seems like on average it should be less than 20%, but just making sure.
Yes, yeah. So there were calculations done to ensure. Yeah.
Great, thanks. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Other questions of staff? I have one, and that is I wanted to clarify with the Welcome Plaza where cars can drop people off. Are they coming from both directions, or is that restricted to one direction?
I think the applicant can confirm. My understanding, it's a two-way traffic at the Welcome Plaza area.
That seems a little risky. I'll ask, we can ask the applicant about how they plan to make sure their contingencies are going to be safe as they get out of cars if they're going both ways. I have no other questions right now. If there are no other questions from the commission at this time, I'd like to call upon the applicant's representative to make their presentation, if there is one.
I'm going to bring up also my associate, the architect, and Mark and David Bernard. I'm Ronnie Turner.
And ideally, you'll limit this to not more than 10 minutes.
Okay, I don't think we'll be long. It was an excellent report that MIG put together. We tried to find the best consultants to deliver the necessary documents that would be, receptive to the committee and also to planning. And so this is a worship center. I want to kind of put that vernacular out there. We are under a cost constraint scenario. We're in a month-to-month rental that we now have, and we've been occupying that for the last 5 years. We've just been told that the whole complex has been sold, so that puts a little added burden on us to move this through. The purpose of going with a sprung structure, and David's here to talk about more of the technical side of that, but that gives us the ability to cut construction costs in half. It cuts time down. This building can be up, and again, I'll let David give you all the technical side of this, but it goes up quickly. We have a lot of retaining walls, of course, to be able to incorporate the structure, but it sits on that slab. And so it allows us to get there sooner. That helps us, again, from a cost constraint and a time constraint scenario for us. So we are a community church. We reach out to the community. I don't know if you're aware of what we do for Easter and things of that nature, but we had 10,000 people that we served at the high school. And we do this annually. And so we are community oriented, and we plan to have our facility used by the community. So we won't have permanent seats in our sanctuary. Those seats will be removable, be used for community purposes, for rent. And we'll have our own rules. When it comes to the parking lot, we will monitor the parking lot and how it's parked. So we'll have a full plan that we'll use every Sunday for service, how cars move around and get from that area drop off to a parking space. We're excited about this opportunity to build this and be a permanent resident here in Richmond, to be able to provide the services that our congregation brings every Sunday. And what gets me excited about our church is that it's a family church, and I serve two Sundays a week in greeting. And what gets me excited is seeing those little kids run through the doors and get excited about being there. So I don't have much more to say. David's got all the technical questions. If you want to know about the sprung structure, he can tell you all about it, how it operates, why we have that pitch, and so on and so forth. So David?
Hey Commission, I'm David. I am the project manager of the design team. And at the beginning of the project, in specifying the building type, we're really balancing interior programming versus budget. And so with that, we needed something that was cost effective, but also offers a lot of large interior volume to fit in all of the interior programming that we wanted to include to serve this congregation. So sprung structures was the perfect fit. And we felt like it really fit the neighborhood better than any other sort of pre-engineered building because of that gable shape, which really does kind of match the residential neighborhood much better than, let's just say, a tilt-up or a metal building. And so with that gable pre-engineered shape, I want to kind of answer the height question and slope question from earlier. We think it really breaks down the scale of a traditional two-story building with a parapet. And so with that, we're still able to fit in everything we want to fit on the interior. The sprung structure building itself, is more than just something that's got great volume and some other fun benefits that we could chat about, but it's also very energy efficient and acoustically friendly for both the surrounding neighborhood, but also the congregation when it comes to worship in the interior. Just sounds great. They're able to, rock on and really worship. The energy efficiency comes from a wall cavity that's packed full of insulation, has curved eaves, but it's also a very airtight envelope. It's actually the most airtight envelope in the building industry. So the mechanical units, they're not going to be running as long as traditional construction. So they're able to save on their utility costs, which is going to be really great just for operational costs of a congregation this size. I'll reserve the rest of the time to any questions you guys might have on the building system or anything else.
Okay, are any questions of the applicant? You just raised one for me, and are you going to be using traditional air conditioning, or are you going to be using heat pumps?
We're going to be using traditional air conditioning.
Did you look at heat pumps at all?
We haven't entered that engineering phase, and so we could.
Yes. I think that would save you even more money operationally if they can be of a sufficient size to regulate that facility.
Affirmative. Traditionally, we're just using ground-mounted RTU units.
No other questions for the applicant? Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
If I can, Commission, if I can just have those who have come out tonight, if I can just recognize them and just have them stand. Members from the Bay Hills Church, if you can just stand, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Excuse me, Chair, I wonder if maybe I should ask a question. If the applicant could just come back up for a moment.
Mr. Turner? Sorry, follow-up question.
I'm sorry, but so the line of my questioning actually had to do with the sidewalk connection to the church and accessibility. And I think there's going to be a discussion about that here. And I want your take about maybe why you didn't provide a sidewalk directly to the church?
We actually do have a sidewalk. We have an accessible route
Yes.
with striping.
Pardon me?
We do have an accessible route to the church from the sidewalk with striping.
Is it striped on the asphalt?
Yes.
Okay, so it's minimally accessible, but it's not necessarily welcoming, is my take. And we'll have a discussion more with the commission, but I'm just putting it out there that I know that's an expense item, and so we'll have to think about that. And I understand that you really want to save costs, but it's really important that your church is a welcoming addition to a neighborhood really does look welcoming for people passing by and even walking by, and that there's ways to access it by foot that is very, attractive and welcoming.
We actually do have a decorative walkway going through the landscape buffer. So if, you know, to be approved.
Maybe we could see that in
from-
the image, because I didn't see that in the plan. Yeah.
If you could put the site plan up, please.
It's right near where the ADA parking is, if we want to pull that back up. Yeah, it's a long slideshow, so one of those pages.
Also too, as I mentioned, cost constraint, but we are continuously raising funds to improve the site as we go. So this is where we're starting to get us in the building, but we're going to continue to improve.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Can we put the plan up just so they can point where the,
KCRT, can you put up the presentation, please? Thank you.
so can you see the plan somewhere on one of the TV screens? And you could kind of generally say where the sidewalk feature you're mentioning might be, so we would have a grasp for that?
You should be able to use the mouse.
Can use the mouse here, too. So just point to the,
See here?
well, I don't see where it is, because that's all landscaping. That's why we said no.
Okay, so down the, I'll call it the right side of the property.
Oh, did you want to see the plan set, or?
Oh, I don't know if you guys have a screen right there.
Yeah, we have the screen here, so you were pointing at the right side of the property.
Right below here, right through there.
Okay, down the, at least through where the ADA spaces are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant? If not, this is the opportunity for anybody opposed to the project to speak. Is there anyone here tonight to speak in opposition to this project?
Or in favor?
Oh, yeah, also, is it, well, I want to get the oppositions out first.
Okay.
I
We
think
do
that's a good
have
message.
3 speakers signed up in the room, and I'm not sure, are any of them opposed?
No, it looks like all three are in favor of the proposal.
And if those speakers who wish to speak in favor of the project, if you could call them up to the podium, and I think each gets 2 minutes?
I believe so.
3 minutes when
3
it's
minutes?
less than 10 speakers.
Okay.
All right, so we have speaker number 1 will be Victoria Williams Turner. We have Paula Martinez and then Manny Martinez as well.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of the project. I just want to say we are so excited to be good neighbors. The project, as they've put together, is user-friendly, and I think they've done all they can do to be in line with the regulations and adjust things as appropriately done. I'm also a real estate broker, and I just want to say the building that currently is there, tear it down, it needs to come down. It's you know, it's going to be such a welcome sight to have the new church there and the beautiful parking lot and the trees that are between the sidewalk and the parking lot. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to see Richmond and Contra Costa County working with us in this manner. And thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
All right, the next speaker will be Paula Martinez.
She's chosen not to speak.
All right, so we'll go with Manny Martinez. Thank you.
I don't know why, but thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Bay Hills Church. I just want to say I'm a native Richmonder. I was born here, raised here, went to school here till high school, went away for college, and unfortunately never came back. But I'm still very tied to the community, have family and friends here. So Richmond is always, I will always consider Richmond home. I just want to say, on behalf of the church, we've decided to make a huge commitment to the city of Richmond because we're building a building here. This church has been, it's almost 80 years old. It was formerly in El Sobrante, and then we moved to Richmond up at the Hilltop. And so we're making a huge commitment to the city of Richmond because we want to be in the city of Richmond. And it's the church is a great community of people, and it's only going to benefit the city. So we're asking you for your help to help us to get this done in a way, in a fast way, because our situation's tenuous, because they won't give us a lease, so we're month to month. They can close us down at any moment. I guess 30 days or, yeah. So we're asking for your help so we can get this done, make this commitment to the city, and we will benefit the city and the community. And we already have, and we will continue to do so, hopefully, for a very, very long time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No other speaker. Are there any speakers on Zoom that raise their hands?
We currently don't have any speakers signed up. Oh, we just got a hand. So I am going to call in, we'll stop the clock first. Fred Sahakian. Fred, you can speak
Hi,
now.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Fred Sahakian. I have a great bit of history regarding doing actual research on CEQA and the placement of religious organizations such as churches and mosques in communities around the Bay Area. I actually did a 10-year study on one down in San Jose, and I understand there's always concerns regarding construction, the use of water, the use of land, and the community in terms of when new churches or new religious buildings are created. And so I'm also a member of the Bay Hills Community Church. I did all this research before I even got here many years ago, and I attend the church regularly. And I just wanted to express that the church leadership that I've known and that my family's known is very responsible. And so I'm sure that they will be very responsive to any of the needs that the commission or the community wants today or in the future. But I would encourage the commission to just forward the plan as is, as presented. The current church that's there is, I believe the gentleman earlier said, 70 years old. This will allow the community to have a brand new facility, new parking. And we all know Richmond and the Bay Area in general is in desperate need of new vitality. And this is an opportunity that will provide a welcome space for community members. I do understand there's maybe some concerns about parking and lines. That, I believe, has existed the way it's planned, or some of the planning has existed since the original church. So I hope that can be pushed out of your mind a little bit when it comes to determining the direction of the vote. So please, I really support this church. Our family does. And I'll be blunt. This church is further from me now than our current location, and so I'll have to wake up a little bit earlier. But in the end of the day, it's a wonderful thing for the community and families around the Bay Area. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, no other speakers on Zoom?
There are no other speakers signed up.
Okay, and I already asked about speaking in opposition. Nobody stood up, so I think we are done with public comment. And at that point, then I'll close the public hearing, and we'll bring the item back to the commission to discuss and take possible action. So at this point, I'll open it up to commissioners with any thoughts or comments. Shall we go left to right? If you're prepared.
I just want to confirm, so the current church that's there, that's not the same church that's moving in, correct? We have two facilities. So this one belongs to your church as well? Yes. And so you're going to build this one up, make it bigger, and then you're going to move and have only one location?
We're tearing down the existing church.
Mr. Turner, if you don't mind coming to the microphone just so the members on Zoom can hear you. Thank you.
So we currently are renting a space at I don't know if that mall is called, it's right there off the Parkway, across from the Chevron station and the auto park. And so we rent that space. It was the old Barnes and Noble space. And so we rent that space because the space at Hilltop is too small. We grew out of that space. And so we are renting that space. We use the Hilltop space on a weekly basis for offices and, you know, children, teenagers, choir rehearsals, things of that nature during the week at Hilltop.
Understood.
So that existing facility will be torn down. It'll be done in a phase. We'll get the new building up before we tear down the old church, and then we'll slowly move into the new facility as we go.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I can go next. I don't have any questions anymore, but I just want to appreciate this application. I think it's a good thing for the community. And I like that you have a large gathering space at the end that could be used for multiple purposes. And I encourage you to offer that up to the community for events that make sense at that location. I do want to second Commissioner Brubaker's point of adding a sidewalk adding a sidewalk from maybe the Welcoming Plaza down to the sidewalk on Hilltop Drive. I think that's important for pedestrian connectivity instead of having to walk on the pavement where cars also drive. And yeah, thank you for your project.
Thank you, Aaron. I have a question for staff member Morgan for in the presentation. If you could talk, I know you mentioned the TDM. I think you had a slide, and you had some statement about the TDM, which is a Transportation Demand Management Plan, which is actually required for this project, right?
I'm sorry, I missed the.
The TDM is required for this project, is
Yes,
that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Can you just say how you described the TDM prior? Maybe repeat what you had said. It had something about reducing car trips and enhancing transit, I think.
Yes, so I can read it as originally stated. So the proposed measures would add up to a potential reduction of vehicle miles traveled of up to 17.1%. While this measurement may not represent 15% lower than the average single occupant vehicle trip generation rate, it does have the potential to bring the project's average VMT, vehicle miles traveled, below the average citywide VMT per the stated goal in the Richmond Code.
Mm-hmm. And I think prior to that, you said what some of the measures were. Could you repeat those?
Some of those measures include a designated passenger loading zone, improving pedestrian connection for walkability, so that includes the sidewalk along Hilltop Drive, and long and short-term bicycle parking.
Okay. So I guess my point is, well, I'll say a couple things first. One is the church will be a great addition to this neighborhood. It is here for a CUP because they're exceeding the height limit. And in this case, I don't see any issue with the height limit on this site and given the topography, so I'm totally okay with that. Answered a lot of questions about some of the concerns I did have, and I have that one remaining concern, which is for people who do choose to walk, and that does reduce vehicle trips, to have to walk down a car aisle with cars backing up is not very welcoming. And for bikes also. So I think if the existing walkway that extends out of the plaza to the accessible parking spaces could just be extended further all the way up to the sidewalk at the street, it's aligned with the current landscape island anyway, so I think it's possible to add that sidewalk without a lot of redesign of the parking lot. So that's something that, I mean, if I have a chance to make a motion, I think I would make a motion that that could be a condition of approval.
Okay, we'll come back to that before we close out. Yep, Commissioner Timmons?
Hi, thank you. I do have a quick, did any of the other design conditions, were any of those big barriers to you all?
No.
Okay.
And Commissioner Brubaker, through the chair, so Mr. Turner is saying that he doesn't see an issue with that as long as it's not required to be pavers or enhanced paving for that section.
Yeah, I would think it would just be a standard concrete sidewalk. Brush concrete, I think you call it. So that you said that would be something that you could find acceptable to as a modification to the current plan?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And if we can add one other thing, because I've gotten a lot of feedback from some of the ladies at our church about the pavers in the plaza. If we can do stamped concrete there versus pavers, that'll be a big win, and I'm hitting a home run.
I'm not big on pavers either. I hear you. My wife keeps telling me to pick up my feet, and I don't know why.
Is that a condition that needs to be changed?
Yeah, I think we'll need to add that as part of the ultimate motion, to add that as an additional condition of approval. I had one final question for staff, and that was I wanted to make sure that the DRB requests or recommendations have been included in the final conditions of approval. I know it talks about doing that, but I just want to make sure it actually happened.
Yes, they're in the resolution currently.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I think we're ready for a motion, and maybe Commissioner Brubaker, you can do that, add your modification to the basic motion here.
So I'd like to make a motion to, let's see, to approve a conditional use permit, lot line adjustment, and design review for a proposed demolition of the church, et cetera. The site located at 4555 Hilltop Drive with two additional conditions. One, that the Welcome Plaza does not have to be pavers and it can be stamped concrete. And two, that the existing paved walkway that extends to the accessible parking spaces be extended all the way out to the existing sidewalk on Hilltop Drive. Clearly there is an aisle that goes across it, so whatever, stripe that, but to extend a clear pathway from the sidewalk and make it accessible to the front door of the church.
So that was recommending approval of the application and as well as the resolution number 20. I just want to get it in
Thank you.
In the resolution 2405, just so we have that in the minutes.
Okay.
All right, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call vote or?
Yeah, I'll do a roll call vote.
Okay.
Vice Chair Harrison?
Yes?
Commissioner Brubaker?
Yes.
Commissioner He?
Yes.
Commissioner Timmons?
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz?
Yes.
Motion passes with Commissioner Agarwal.
Congratulations, and we look forward to your project in the very near future.
And Vice Chair Harrison, if I could just note that, the Planning Commission's item is subject to appeal within 10 days of action, meaning that an appeal would need to be filed by 5 p.m. on June 17th, 2024.
And that's appeal to the City Council.
Correct. Thank you.
Is that this one?
It was in the, I found it on the, elsewhere.
So
I went to the
ideally, when we make a motion, we should
Yeah.
include the resolution number.
Yeah. Let me, I just closed it, but I'll bring it up again.
It's okay. I guess I'm
Where I-
used to bringing the hard copy in, but it doesn't seem to be listed there.
Where I found it was in the staff's conclusion, so staff recommends that we
Oh,
do
okay.
that.
New material.
Okay. Sure. We're going to take about a 3-minute break.
3-minute break.
Planning Commission meeting back in session. Next is item 3, which is the CPSA Emergency Housing PLN 23-360, a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit to allow the conversion of an existing office building into an emergency shelter with up to 25 beds. So at this time, I'll call for the staff report.
Virginia will be giving the staff report.
Hello again, Virginia Morgan, and I'm also presenting today on the CPSA Emergency Housing Project at 207 37th Street. The presentation should be available. Great. Staff recommends that the Commission review the project and adopt Resolution 2406 approving PLN 360. The project site is located at 207 37th Street at the corner of Bissell Avenue and 37th Street. The site had a pre-existing use as an emergency shelter within the last 2 years. The project site falls within the T5 MS zone of the form-based code. This is a Main Street zone, which is intended to provide a vibrant, walkable, urban Main Street commercial area that provides locally and regionally serving commercial, retail, civic, and public uses, as well as a variety of urban housing choices. The open subzone is specifically intended for a diverse mix of uses and building types. The general plan designation is mixed use with a commercial emphasis. Here are some images of the existing site, including the view of the front of the structure from 37th Street, the side from Bissell Street, and the rear from the parking area. The project proposes converting an existing office building into an emergency shelter. The proposal involves few changes to the structure itself. Most of the proposed alterations are at the rear of the structure in the parking area. The internal layout of the building, including walls, doors, and hallways, will remain largely the same, including the existing office to remain near the entrance for management staff, which is a requirement per RMC standards for emergency shelters. 2 pairs of offices will be combined to create 2 new bathrooms for the residents. And exterior improvements to the structure include the addition of windows at the rear bedrooms, which is required for egress requirements per California Building Code, Appendix P for emergency housing. Demolition in the rear parking area includes removing the existing non-conforming wheelchair ramp and non-conforming parking stripes. A 30-square-foot addition to the rear entrance is proposed to accommodate a vestibule and reconstructed wheelchair ramp per ADA requirements. A 340-square-foot courtyard area is proposed as required for congregation area per RMC standards for emergency shelters. Additional improvements in the parking area include a pedestrian walkway, required short-term bicycle parking, a refuse area, and reconfigured parking spaces, including 2 tandem spaces and an accessible space. As proposed, the top tandem space would need to include an extra foot of width as it abuts the wall of the refuse area, and further, the proposed configuration does not allow sufficient space for cars, bikes, and pedestrians to maneuver safely. As such, staff recommends that the parking be limited to 2 spaces, including 1 accessible space, for staff approval prior to building permits. Lastly, a 6-foot fence is proposed around the parking area for security, as well as a person gate and rolling vehicle gate for access. Staff recommends the fence be required to be in an open metalwork or semi-open wood design to allow for some surveillance and to be better compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. A welcome sign is proposed above the person gate, which will be required to be less than 4 square feet and compliant with RMC sign standards as a condition of approval. The rear of the parking area abuts a mostly vacant lot about 30 feet in width, which includes a small pathway for storage access and 3 mature evergreen trees. This area, in addition to the proposed fence, should create some buffer between the rear parking area and the adjacent single-family home. The project is exempt from CEQA per sections 15303 for conversions of small structures and section 15269C for emergency projects. The project is compliant with all standards in Article 15, in addition to specific requirements for emergency shelters, such as a minimum distance, a minimum distance from other shelters of at least 300 feet, and a required outdoor courtyard for client congregation. The following findings are required for the approval of a conditional use permit. The project is consistent with the general plan designation as medium-intensity mixed use, which encourages a diverse mix of uses. The existing building remains consistent with the neighborhood in terms of size and design, and provides additional security and privacy with the addition of a 6-foot fence, and with additional lighting, monitored security cameras, and trained security personnel as recommended conditions of approval. The proposed use will be subject to the provisions in the Richmond zoning ordinance relating to lighting, noise, and other performance standards, and lighting would be required to be shielded and casting downwards as a condition of approval. The project meets standards outlined in Article 15 with additional recommended conditions of approval, and the site is in an urban location and is less than 1 mile away from highway access. Staff has developed a number of conditions of approval that address the issue of neighborhood compatibility, such as the 37th Street entry be designated as the main entry, and that queuing be monitored so that it does not occur in any public space. The site will be subject to all required noise and performance standards, and additional conditions are recommended for adequate sanitation and sanitary facilities, as well as proper ventilation. Exterior improvements such as a fresh coat of paint and the removal of the metal screen at the front entrance, as well as required graffiti abatement within 24 hours. As noted, the staff recommends that the parking area be limited to 2 spaces to allow adequate space for all users. Lastly, current RMC standards allow for up to 25 residents. However, staff recommends a minimum 75 square feet of living space per resident per room for a maximum capacity of 16 residents based on research conducted in other jurisdictions. Based on comments from local residents and with input from the Richmond Police Department, as well as other local agencies, staff recommends conditions of approval that address the issue of security. Compliance per RMC standards for lighting and illumination, and specifically security lighting. RMC standards for emergency shelters, such as a requirement for on-site management when residents are present. Also, trained security personnel and monitored security cameras. A requirement for a semi-open gate and fence design to allow for surveillance. And authorized city staff must be allowed to inspect the premises to confirm compliance of all conditions of approval. Staff understands that there was some community outreach during the previous shelter operation. The applicant has contacted the Pullman Neighborhood Council but did not receive a response. Staff received 7 public comments, including 2 since the publishing of the staff report, from local residents who were negatively impacted by the shelter during its previous operation. Most comments stated that there was an increase in police activity due to the shelter and that shelter residents were thought to have been loitering and threatening the safety of other community members. We understand that both the applicant and the property owner are here this evening and intend to make a presentation. Again, staff recommends that the Commission adopt Resolution 2406 and approve the project. Are there any questions from the Commission?
Does anybody have questions for staff at this time? We can always come back later.
I'm just wondering, could I go? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The agenda says that there is a tentative recommendation for conditional approval for this project in the agenda, which doesn't really align with the last slide that you had.
Oh, my mistake. The last slide should have said conditional approval.
And I'm curious why it says tentative recommendation. I haven't seen that. Tentative recommendation, conditional approval. Or is that off? I guess that's often used. Never mind. Never mind. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
You referred to something called Article 15? What is that?
In the zoning code.
Okay, so it didn't have a context.
Ah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, if not, then I'm going to open the public hearing. And first would be a presentation by the applicant, and that could be up to 10 minutes. Is the applicant wishing to make a presentation? Please come up and you want to come up to over here and.
Will he be, look, just confirm you're able to see it, Greg, the slides? Or you have your printed version? Okay.
I do need to see the slides while I'm talking, or else.
Then Virginia and Shauna, it's okay to allow Greg to use the table. And then for any guests we have on Zoom, if you would like to speak on this item, if you could please use your raise hand button. *9 if you're on a phone, or if you're on a tablet or computer, just press the raise hand button.
Is this working? Go ahead. Yes. Okay. Another option is I do have a portable mic and I can stand where I can see it. I don't really care.
I don't think the mic is picking up.
Oh, Richard, do you mind helping?
It's on. No, that isn't the problem. We can't. How can we do the presentation?
There's a thing on the lower.
Is that a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay. No.
I hope. Overcame technology. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Greg Van Mechelen. I'm the applicant. I'd also like to introduce the project owners, developers, Lonnie Holmes and Joan Tang, who will also be speaking. I'm going to try and make my presentation very brief, even though I have a lot here. I don't want to give a seminar on the issue that is of most concern to us, which is the proposed reduction of occupancy on the project. We originally proposed for 25, which is consistent with the zoning code. It's also consistent with the size of the building, in our opinion, based on other people's experiences throughout the state. And so, oops. So again, this is the layout of the building. The blue areas are the bedrooms. The yellow area in the lower right is the office. The green areas are the congregation and public spaces for the residents of the building. The purple are the bathrooms, and the gray is utility spaces, HVAC, janitor's closet, et cetera. The staff, there's three issues that I wanted to address, and I'll do this very quickly. The maximum occupancy is the most important one because they are proposing a significant reduction of the allowable number of occupants in the space. There also are operational issues that the clients will address. The staff gives 3 examples of occupancy standards. Red Bluff is the sort of outlier in all of that at 125 square feet per resident. Los Angeles has 70 per resident for the first resident plus 50 for a room that contains more than 1 resident. And then Solano County has 50 square feet. Where I think they made the mistake or the misunderstanding, and I called the director of planning from Red Bluff this week, she said the 125 square feet is not per resident for a room, for a bedroom, it's actually the overall building. So if you have a 5,000 square foot building like we have, that would allow, divided by 125 would allow, I think, 40 residents in the building. So the 125 is not applied to bedrooms, which kind of makes sense. 125 square feet in the Bay Area is a pretty decent sized bedroom. So this is a deviation. Los Angeles actually probably makes the most sense in their zoning code. What they require is 70 square feet for the first person in a room plus 50 square feet for each additional person. So 120 square feet would be for a 2-person bedroom. And of course, this wouldn't apply to every room. For example, a dining room would require, typically is 15 square feet per person per the California Building Code. So it's kind of arbitrary in a sense to assign these values based on the larger numbers, which are based on the building code. The building code actually is a requirement for exiting, and how big of an exit do you actually need from the building. Solano County, again, has 50 square feet of space per resident, which is a much smaller number. So there are 3 ways of doing this. If the Planning Commission wants to impose a limitation on the size or the limitation on the number of occupants. One is to provide an overall area per person for the building or facility. And I'll give some examples of that I found from the rest of the state. Another is minimum requirements for private space. That would be the bedroom space. That doesn't include the kitchens and the living rooms and everything else. The first number would include the entire building, the gross square footage of the building. The second would just be what the size of the bedrooms needs to be. The third option is for the commission to punt on this and defer to the building and fire department, the fire marshal and the building official, to establish the occupancy for the building. Any of those would be reasonable ways, I think, to do it. If we were to provide an overall area, I give some examples. Contra Costa County and the city of Red Bluff both use 125 square feet. Contra Costa County actually defines it much more clearly. They say of gross building area. So they are not doing the ambiguity that Red Bluff did. Red Bluff's code, by the way, was written in 2008. So when I spoke with the director, she said, we're updating it right now, but it's very old code. San Gabriel uses 130 square feet per person, and Alhambra and San Bernardino use 150 square feet. Again, this is the gross building area, not the area of a particular room. Solano is kind of ambiguously written. They say 50, but I can't tell if that's for a room or for the whole building. And then in Los Angeles, as I mentioned. The other way of doing it, as I mentioned, is the minimum area per resident in bedroom space. Alameda County and a bunch of Southern California cities all use 50 square feet per person of private space, specifically adding that it is separate from common space. As I mentioned before, LA uses 70 for the first person and 50 for each additional. Alhambra has a much more complicated, but it's not a badly written one, of how much personal space plus storage plus this plus that, in addition to the overall. And then, of course, the last option is to defer to the building codes, which you have to do anyway, because the fire marshal is going to come in and say whether this is acceptable or not. Emeryville, Corona, and Eureka explicitly state this in their zoning code. They use the occupant load factors from section 1004 of the California Building Code, which provides for a bunch of occupancies. Emergency shelter is not included yet, but the two that seem the most rational would either be a dormitory, which is, this really is a sense of dormitory, and the building code uses 50 square feet, which is also what I used in designing this, or it uses 200 for residential. I don't want to get into all the codes, but basically Los Angeles, the 70 plus 50 is derived from the Appendix P, which is the governing ordinance in the building code for emergency shelters. But the building code says per structure, it doesn't say per room, so there's some ambiguity in all of that. Then I give, and this is in your handouts, a full listing of all the different jurisdictions with their codes. So what we're asking is that the conditions of approval include one of the following, whether a gross building area of 125 or 130 or 150, either that, or personal space per occupant, either the 50 or the 70 plus 50, or to simply just defer to the building officials and the fire marshals for what the occupant load should be. The 75 is much higher than anybody else. It's 50% higher than what most of the other things use. What would this affect on the project? If we went with the first option, is an assignment of square footage for the entire building, with 125, that would actually allow 40 occupants. At 150, that would allow 33 occupants. So that would be way more than is permitted by the standards in the zoning code. We actually provide 200 square feet per occupant in what we're doing. If we went with the personal space regulation, I've got this long chart, you can look at this, or I can ask questions about it. We would ask for a little bit of flexibility because this is an existing building. A couple of our rooms are just 5 square feet short. If you went with the LA standard, the 70 plus 50, that would require 220 square feet for 4 occupants. We have some rooms that are 215 square feet, so close and yet so far. Last thing is on the courtyard, and then I'll turn it over to the owners. I did a quick redesign sketch of the courtyard. As I understand it, that can be taken up with staff rather than bothering with the Planning Commission with all the innuendos. But changing from 3 spaces to 2 does provide us much better options for the rear courtyard.
If you're not going to be doing a presentation, you can go ahead and come to this podium over here.
Just, oh, yeah, if you hand them over, and then just make sure the red button is on.
Make sure what now?
If you could just make sure the red button so the mic is on.
Oh, got it. Okay, great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for this time. I am Lonnie Holmes, the CEO for CPSA, and my partner Joanne Tang also is listed as the owner. I'm here to address some of the concerns. One of the reasons why we got into this is because we were approached by the city of Richmond, who was also in partnership with Ways to Love, which was an organization that contracted with the city of Richmond Planning Department, and also HCEB, which was a housing navigator out of Oakland, who were providing services to this population. And this all started as a result of the Castro encampment that was in the process of being closed, or actually they had closed it, and they needed some place to place those individuals out of the Castro encampment. And so they approached myself and Joanne about it. We agreed, and we said, fine, we'll do it. Now, with these individuals, what they indicated and stated emphatically before we got into is that everyone was to have an individual lease, which made us a landlord. And as you can see in those emails, we gave an example of the lease, and I'm sorry if I don't have enough copies, but those individual leases basically put us in a situation where we were essentially just landlords. And these individuals, in terms of services, the services were provided by Ways to Love and HCEB, and in some respect, SOS, okay, because I think they were picking up and doing laundry and things of that particular nature. Before individuals moved in, we have cameras. We still have cameras that are inside and outside the building. And Joanne will speak to it. Some of the neighbors that are, immediate neighbors were informed of what was going on. They had talked. She has telephone numbers for some of the neighbors as well. But it is very concerning, obviously, when I've seen some of these comments, because no one wants the neighbors to be victimized in any kind of way. I certainly don't. I am a former law enforcement individual. I spent 30 years between state parole and county probation.
Mr. Turner, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but his 10 minutes did expire. Do you want to give him a couple of?
It didn't start on 10 minutes.
Oh,
Well,
no,
what I-
he was part of the Greg, so let me get some clarification.
What I'd like to
Would-
suggest is that the first person was their main presenter, and these other are secondary presenters, and they have either 3 or 5 minutes. Let's say 5.
So do you want to give him an additional 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
For this
Sorry,
for
Mr.
this
Turner.
person and also for the owner. So
Can I proceed, or-
you got a couple more minutes.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So the point simply was this, is that we were relegated to being landlords, and we did what we needed to do in terms of making sure the building was clean. We had visual surveillance in and around the building, and the other organizations that work with the city of Richmond in terms of programming, that programming element and aspect was actually left to them. Now, if there were any issues that came about, we certainly would have been responsive, particularly in terms of, me, in terms of, the supervision aspect of this thing as well. So
So
when
if
I
you could
read
wrap
some of
it
these
up.
comments.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yes,
Thanks.
okay. All right, so the point simply is this, and so moving forward, what we want to do is contract with the Department of Corrections, where we'd have the individuals, obviously involved with the CDCR and county probation, and they would be also supervised by their probation officer or parole agent, and we've allotted space for those individuals to come in to help monitor those individuals as well, okay? So, am I good, or? do we
I
have
think
a-
you've reached your 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
input.
Commissioner, all right.
I think you had, Ms. Tang, did you want to speak? Yes. And also, if you could limit your time to 5 minutes, that'd be great.
That's okay. Hi, good evening to all. Oh, that's okay. I think a couple of minutes will be fine. One day, one lady, came to me. I was on the back, the parking lot. The neighbor, gave me the phone. Asked me, about the people living there. I told them, this I come from a city. We are the landlord. We are not running program. And I told her, if anything happen, just give me a phone call. I give her a phone. We exchange the phone number. And after that, nobody, report to me. Nobody call me, and also that no police report everything. After, I think sometime in May. I still have her phone number in my contact phone number, on my record. So I don't know why, Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure that's something that we can address as the commission. I guess I should now have any other that wish to speak in favor of the project. You'd have, is it 2 minutes?
Let me double check. I think here we have about, how many people? 7? 1, that's 8. So is there anybody on the Zoom that wishes to speak on this item? If you are going to speak, you need to raise your hand now. You can raise the hand button or *9 if you're joining us by a phone. Okay, I don't see any speakers, so we won't be taking any online speakers, which means we have 8 speakers, so 3 minutes each.
3 minutes? Okay, thank you. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Saucer. I'm a native of Richmond, and also I am a subcontractor for transportation here in the city of Richmond. Also, I'm the CEO of Men and Women of Valor Resource Center. And also, I work with parole and also with probation, and for Contra Costa County, I run programs here in the city. Also working with the housing and homeless. Today I was with Senator Nancy Skinner. What we do is we work in communities, CEOs that run programs for different counties. Also, I know that the homeless population here in the city of Richmond is much needed, and for people that are being in reentry, coming back into the population. We work here in the city of Richmond needing housing to house people. We got to work with the mental health. Also, we got to address the homeless issues that we have here and people coming back into the population to do something constructive. We need housing. I think this is a great program. We also can have, just like they have all these other programs here in the city for as the rescue mission, GRIP. I also have transitional houses in Point Richmond and all over in different areas here in the city of Richmond. I house people, bring them in, give them job readiness, get their education back together, put them with the Department of Rehabilitation. I'm an adjudicator with the state. So I work with all different programs. And I am a subcontractor here for the city of Richmond for transportation, where I get people signed up for our transit, Lyft, and other programs. Also, I work with the court system for parole to help make a difference in this city. Richmond is behind right now for its housing people. We're gonna have to do something very constructive. If in that area they don't want housing, we're gonna do something to push, to help get the community to work together as a village, to do something spiritual. I have the gift of helps. Things are gonna change. I don't know what the city want to do about this, but I think they should vote for this to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the project? Anybody online that wants to speak in favor? Okay, then at this point, we'll be opening up to those who wish to speak in opposition to the project. If there is one particular primary spokesperson, they would get 10 minutes. Otherwise, everyone will have 3 minutes. So I don't know if you've designated a lead speaker or not. If not, everybody gets 3 minutes.
All right, so the first speaker will be Ronald Sanchez.
So,
good evening. Thank you for your time and the opportunity. I was not officially appointed, but just now, I guess, for the
Can you state your name,
presentation.
please? So we can...
My name is Roxana Molina. I am the single home property that Ms. Morgan was talking about, directly adjacent to this property. I'm also the neighbor that came to talk to Ms. Tang, and we did not exchange phone numbers. I gave you my number and you never gave me yours, and so I didn't have a phone to call her on. This property has been neglected since there was an Asian community center that was renting there from her before, and ever since they left, this property has been neglected, has been a dump for garbage, health hazard for all of us, and they already used this property as shelter before without any permit, without any community input at all, and we were put under severe circumstances, including our young children on our block. They were abused by all these people that were coming in, and she had told me, Ms. Tang had told me that the shelter was allowing 25 people at that time. There were more than 25 people. People were just coming in families with children. All of our neighbors have spoken many times, and we all have witnessed prostitution, drug dealing, and crimes against our properties. My personal car was broken into twice. I've had to replace the windows twice, and the property stolen out of my car. Properties that also over the fence, my fence foresees the parking lot where all these people were having access to this building, and my backyard faces Citibank. There's a fence between two parking lots, but the people can just go around and just cross over. Well, they jumped over my fence. The police department was no help. I have called many times, and they tell me if there aren't any weapons involved, they cannot respond because the police department is too busy responding to other crimes. No one ever showed up. We have no safety, we have no protection, even though we pay taxes to protect ourselves and have a peaceful neighborhood to live in. We work long hours. This is our safe haven. We come to rest, and we have not been able to do that when there are people in this base, place that is being used as a shelter. We were woken up many times at all hours of the night with scaffolds, screaming, fights, and then the police was called once because there was a weapon. They were looking and looking with all this noise right next door. There is no place to be calling it peaceful where you can just go home and rest. Totally unfair. We are working families that are seeking just to have a place to rest. And then this place is not adequate for a shelter. I don't have anything against the houseless. I know that there's a problem, but this building is not appropriate. And then this owner, Ms. Tang, has shown to be neglectful to this property. There's been so much garbage left behind every time a group of people had come to live there. And yes, there's no fencing, there's no protection. So we need something done about this, and I oppose to this permit, and I do not agree that this building should be a shelter, not appropriate for this type of help for the houseless. Again, we are very scared, we're very frustrated, and we have no help from the police department. So we really need to feel secured and to feel that this is where we live, this is where we pay our taxes to go towards. So if they didn't have a permit and they were able to run a shelter before, there had to be some kind of violation there to just call it a shelter without a permit. Nothing to be safe about. I thank you very much for your time, and I don't know if anybody else, were you going to talk?
Yeah, we'll call up the next speakers. We have an order.
Okay. I would just really very much appreciate it. I myself work for the public school system. I serve my community, and I do input and do as much as I can to keep the street clean and safe. I do help others that are helpless. I do feed some of the houseless that are around. I do provide water and food. But, the help that is needed is a lot more, but not on our block. I am so sorry, but not on our block. We need safety. We need to be feeling like we actually go home to a safe place and not to a place where we get attacked and we have no peaceful night.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Could we please have, some, will you all please be quiet? This is not the purpose of the meeting to have you discuss it. We're having a meeting at the commission.
How do you know that she's Mexican?
Okay, can we have order in the chambers, please?
If they don't.
Look, I work with all mankind.
If we can't have decorum in the room, we're going to recess the meeting. So please, let's have this be a civil meeting. That's the intent of this, to get the discussion out here, not to have sidebars. So if this happens again, we're going to recess the meeting until we can get control of things. So if we're ready to go forward, let's have our next speaker.
All right, the next speaker will be Ronald Sanchez.
Hi, my name is Ronald Sanchez. Thanks to everybody.
I want to say that I don't want a shelter in front of my house. I live in the house for 20 years. I pay taxes for the property to Contra Costa County. I pay already over $70,000 in taxes over 20 years. There was a shelter a year ago. It was too much for me and for my family and for our neighbor. There were people just watching me every single day, 24/7. Then they trespassed my property 3 times. I came to the city hall and I talked to one of the person at the city hall, and he told me that there was no shelter in that place. They said that if there was somebody living in that place, it was illegal. But there was a shelter. I had to call the police almost every day because there was a fight. 11 o'clock p.m., 2 o'clock p.m., 4 a.m. There was a lot of fight. Okay, I don't want a shelter, and I don't want a shelter in my neighborhood. There is 1 block from the middle school. Okay, all the people that were criminals, like they said, they came from jail. Okay, a shelter brings drugs, drug dealers, drug users. They bring sex offenders, prostitution. That's what a shelter is. Criminals, like they said. Mr. Martinez is the mayor. He has the obligation to see the best for our community, for our families, for everyone in the neighborhood. We want peace in the neighborhood. We want prosperity. We want education in that community. If someone has compassion for homeless people, help them out. But don't bring the problem to my neighborhood. I understand that there are a lot of people that they have no houses. But we want to live in peace. That's what we want. Okay, now it's really hard when my wife, she was going to work at 11 p.m. and somebody was waiting for her outside in front of the car. And then I have to call 911 because they almost attacked my wife. 3 times they went to my house. I got the videos and I can show the videos to you guys. And was the same people from that shelter. So, and that's not good for me. Police officers, they came almost every single night. Sometimes they show up and they say, "Do you call me?" "No, I called you yesterday." But nobody showed up.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next speaker. The next speaker will be Abigail.
I would appreciate it
Corrado.
if we would not have applause one way or the other here. We're just trying to hear what people say. So if we could refrain from that applause, I would appreciate it very much.
All right, the next speaker will be Abigail Corrado.
I'm sorry, but I didn't request to speak, but just that he said is true since they got there. We have a bad experience. They start to bother people, get close to the cars, close to the properties. That's why we are not agree, and also there is a school close to that neighborhood. I think it's not good for the children. That's it. It's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Carol Lopez.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Carol López, soy mexicana. Estoy en contra del proyecto que tienen, porque ya fui víctima de las personas que están ahí. Tengo reporte de policía, mi carro fue quebrado, me robaron. Yo tenía que salir a trabajar y no podía salir sola, tenían que irme a dejar al carro porque siempre había gente afuera, prostitución, drogas, como ya dijeron ellos.
Carol, ¿quieres que haga traducción?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to translate, so pause while I translate. Her name is Carol Lopez. She lives in the area. She's against the project there were reasons of crime. ¿Y qué más?
Ya me robaron, me quebraron mi vidrio las personas que vivían
They
ahí
broke her
también.
windows.
Tengo reporte de policía, está documentado.
She has police reports.
Me robaron cosas personales de mi hijo con su información. Tengo el reporte de policía.
They stole personal information from her son.
Mi hijo tiene 4 años y no nos sentimos seguros desde que esas personas estaban ahí. Ahora que ellos se fueron, todo volvió a la paz, tranquilidad, y ahorita pretenden regresar con todo eso otra vez. Es una incertidumbre que todos tenemos que vivir todos los días.
And she has a 4-year-old son who also felt unsafe, and since the residents have vacated, peace has come back into the neighborhood, and it's something that they weren't able to keep in the neighborhood, and has brought disorder.
Estamos también a favor de que la gente tenga un lugar para vivir, pero no creemos que ese espacio tan pequeño sea propio para que venga gente de las cárceles, prostitución, que viene saliendo de drogas. Creemos en una segunda oportunidad, pero no creemos que ese sea el espacio propio para ellos. Hay una escuela cerquísimas de ahí. Todos los niños pasan por ahí para ir a sus casas.
Okay. She says it's near a school. A lot of kids travel nearby, that they're supportive of emergency housing, but they believe that the building is too small for it to be occurring here, and then that it's just a pathway for school children on a regular basis.
Y yo no tengo experiencia en ese tipo de proyectos, pero no considero que las personas tengan la experiencia para poder correr un proyecto así, conforme a la experiencia que tuvimos atrás.
She said based on their previous experience, they don't believe the applicants can properly operate the facility.
Gracias.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Sergio Joshua Vega Vargas.
When they were there, I couldn't feel safe because like every time me and my friends were playing outside, they would literally start screaming and fighting. Like we couldn't feel safe. At night, I couldn't sleep. They were just like, they just kept like yelling and fighting. And there was this other time when I woke up early in the morning because like I heard a fire truck, and when we went outside there was like a fire truck and like it looked burned at the place that it was there where it was, and I couldn't feel safe. Like I know they need a home, but like they can have a second chance. I believe in that though. But still, they literally it's not like a good place because there are literally children there like me. They can't feel safe. It's like maybe somewhere else, like where it's more like, where there's like less people there, like where people won't be like that, like greatly affected. But I don't think it's a safe place to put it because like, nobody can feel safe there. When they were there, there was more police there. There was more police activity, so we couldn't feel safe. Like, even though the police was there, they would still do their stuff. They would, like, start fighting, and they would, like, start menacing each other and, like, threatening each other. That's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Mario Ratana Barbosa.
Thank you for having me. I have 18
years living in that house. Okay, I'm paying taxes. I'm working. I can show you guys how many hours I'm working every day. I have two little ones, boy and girl, 6 and 7. Okay, so the problem with this thing that they try to do is like they see like it's just business. It's no safety for us. We pay the taxes, like the other people say. We're looking to have a safe place to sleep, to live, to rest. After these long hours, you guys want just to think about it to prove that. You bring me to my neighbor a more problem to deal. Just picture myself, my regular hours. I wake up 2 in the morning to right now. I'm working in the city for this company, trash company, okay? You can see my staff. I was so crazy to come to this, I don't know how you say this meeting, we can call meeting, to express myself, our frustration. Please don't approve this. You have to think about it to us. If you guys prove this, you prove this project, you bring me a guys that have a right like me. You bring a healthy, it's like people from the jail, they have a problem with health, to think about it right and all that stuff. I cannot walk around with my dog, with my daughter, which is 6 years old, and my son, even my wife, safety. Please don't prove that. Don't bring me more problem to my place. We cannot save. Like they say, when we call to the cops, is nothing that they can do. If you guys prove that, it's gonna be just me against them, because they can tell me, oh, we live here too. But they don't pay taxes, they don't work. I understand you wanna help, go and help, but another area. That building, please guys, look closely, is not the right building to bring 25 people. Maybe later on, if you guys prove this, later on they come out with another project. Oh, guess what? We can go bigger. We can do this. And how about us? Think about it for our family, for Richmond. We don't need that. It's not the right place to bring those people. Please, don't do that. Please. So, I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one last speaker slip here. Evelyn Morales, who's provided written comments, which I'll go ahead and read into the record. I'm against the emergency housing program due to the unsafeness it brings. When the facility was being used as a shelter, it brought drugs, violence, and a filthy community. When all this was going on, the police did nothing when cars were broken into or tampered with. I felt unsafe walking my dog in the mornings due to the people outside doing drugs, giving stares, and catcalling. The shelter should be built elsewhere. We don't want needles on our streets. We don't want to hear people arguing late at night, and we don't want our cars and houses being broken into. Not to mention there's a middle school feet away. Children should not need to see people injecting themselves or be harassed by the people in the facility. And this concludes Evelyn's comments. Thank you.
All right, do we have anybody online?
I do have 2 hands, 3 now. So I will start by allowing the Samsung ID to speak. So you'll need to unmute yourself, the Samsung phone. Okay, the
Buenas noches
Samsung.
a todos. ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, ahora sí.
¿O me puedes traducir, por favor?
Sí, nomás si puedes tomar pausas entre... Okay.
Claro que sí. Quiero ser breve solamente. Mi nombre es Raúl Godínez Guerra. Tengo 10 años viviendo en el vecindario.
Okay, his name is Raul Guerrero, and he's been living for 10 years in the neighborhood.
Y pues no creo que sea el lugar adecuado para un shelter en el vecindario.
And he doesn't think that this is the appropriate place for a shelter in his neighborhood.
Porque el vecindario tiene demasiados problemas, como dicen los vecinos, como prostitución, drogadicción, gente tomando afuera con música y robos.
He says that there's already problems in the neighborhood around prostitution, theft, drug abuse, loitering, and he thinks that this use will contribute to those.
Y creo yo que es un vecindario lleno de familias con niños y no creo que es lo más correcto porque uno llama a la policía y la policía no te ayuda en absolutamente nada cuando uno paga taxis.
He says that this is a neighborhood with families, with kids, and that when you contact the police, they're unresponsive and they pay their taxes.
Y la policía siempre acude 2-3 horas después de que la gente se ha ido, se ha marchado. Y vuelvo a repetir, tienen que pensar en el vecindario primero que nada antes de traer más problemas.
And he says it's difficult when the police doesn't respond until 2 or 3 hours after the situation, and that he doesn't believe that this is appropriate for his neighborhood.
Y prácticamente el vecindario no quiere más problemática porque la policía es insuficiente y no responde a los llamados de cuando uno les llama para que corran a alguien que no es del vecindario y que está haciendo algo, un delito allí, estar tomando, drogándose, prostitución, como te comento, robo.
He says that he doesn't believe that we should add to the problems because the police services are inadequate for the area to be dealing with delinquents, drinking, public loitering, and thefts and robberies in the area.
Y creo que lo único que quiere el vecindario es paz para todo el mundo, descansar, como dijo el joven que habló hace un momento, y es lo que pedimos para la gente que vive dentro del vecindario. Gracias.
Okay, gracias. So he says that the neighborhood just is seeking peace, as the young man that just spoke said, that they just want peace in their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more online?
Yes, we have 2 more speakers. So the next speaker is Jessica. I'm going to allow you to speak. Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I've been living in this neighborhood for more than 20 years. I was raised there. Prior to this shelter that was not permitted, there was no problems. There were no break-ins, none of that sort to what all the neighbors had written. We had submitted multiple emails to people, to police, inquiring about the trafficking because there were so many cars every hours of the night. There was people using drugs. We've submitted reports from others neighbors as well, since we were all seeing this. There was someone slumped over in a car, overdosed. At one point, people were just, sleeping out in their cars, throwing trash. They would bring just a lot of loitering. And not only just that, we need housing. However, we need to think about all the negative impacts that happen within early childhood, as there is many families with young children walking to and from school, picking up, and we don't want anyone to be harassed as there was happening. So, if the owner says she wasn't aware of anything going on, that just shows how neglectful she was to know what was really going on to the person she was renting unlawfully or whatever was going on. So of course we're against this because of the issues it already arose, all the impacts it made upon us, the hardships it caused. So I'm just, we all have kids, we all have our houses. We do want to come to peace and safety. We don't want to have to worry about, who's watching? Is somebody going to break into my house? Is somebody going to break into my car? As we know, inflation is a huge problem in California right now. So we don't want our cars getting broken into and having to pay the $500 charge that they charge for, putting new windows on our car. So we don't want needles from the drug use. We don't want people just walking and, just everything that was happening just was very, there was a lot of negative impacts, which have left us in this case. And that's why we are so against it. So I oppose, and hopefully this doesn't come upon. Maybe we can do something else. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and the last speaker we have is Alexa Garcia. Alexa? Oh, Alexia.
Yes.
Sorry.
Hello, my name is Alexia Garcia, and I'm definitely against this project because my children were harassed. And first of all, I'm a mother, and my priority is safety of my children. Right now, as I'm speaking, I'm shaking and just remembering that one afternoon, my teen son was playing soccer in our backyard when one of the people that was living there in that shelter decided to walk in, just straight up walk in and go towards the yard where we have a playground, a basketball court. We have all these activities for my children and the rest of our children in the community that also joined. And he was in there shirtless and still harassed my child that was playing soccer, telling him, "What the fuck are you looking at? Why would someone walk into our backyard and speak to my child that's 13 years old like that?" And I have another child that's 6. He's 6 years old, and he got to witness this whole situation. And I am very pissed off because the owner should have known what was going on in her property. And ever since that shelter was occupied by these people, a lot of things happened in this community. First of all, that whole situation with my child happened. I walked downstairs as I heard my teen son scream, "Mom." He's old enough so he can be playing outside, but as I walked downstairs to see what's happening, I confronted this individual, and he still said all these offensive bad words to me in front of the rest of the children of our community. There's always about 10 to 12 children playing together in our backyard because that's how unite our community is. Because our children play together. Because this community is basically a united community. We clean after others that come in litter, and we just watch over each other. And this individual literally just spoke to me like if I was trash. He called me a bitch. He said he was gonna come back for me. He said, "Go ahead, call the police. Richmond police don't do nothing." Exactly, and that's what I did. I called the Richmond Police Department for what? So they don't come? So they can tell me over the phone to make a police report? I don't understand. I don't understand why the city of Richmond wants to put the emergency planning in that neighborhood. We have a school right in the corner, a middle school. There's children passing by every day in the morning and the afternoon. We have children. If the city of Richmond really cares, first they should care about the children, about the safety. Not just that, they also broke into my vehicle. They damaged my door. Who's gonna pay for it? The city of Richmond, the owner of this property? They keep using my water hose in the front. Who's gonna pay half of my water bill? Are they gonna give me money? No, I don't think so. Who's gonna repair all these things? Who's gonna be there for my children if something happens?
Thank you, Alexia. That's your time.
Okay. We're supposed to have rebuttals, is that correct?
Yes, Vice Chair.
Okay, the next step in our process is that each side is allowed to rebut what the other one has said. So we'll have one person, if you will, for each side to speak for 3 minutes in any kind of rebuttal for what we've heard. So we'll start with, if you want, we can have, you're there?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. First of all, let me just clear up something here. There's a lot been said about us not having a license and all this stuff. We do have a license with the city. We've had a license for some time, and that's on the record. The other thing, obviously, is that collusion comes to mind. The fact that we need to go back to Africa, and there's other choice words that I've heard and so forth, but obviously there's a race issue here with individuals that look like me that were occupying this shelter, and so that's pretty obvious. But let me just say this. Irregardless to what the issues are, we want everybody to be safe and moving forward, you know, and by the way, we've had cameras up since we even started this project. And so if there's anything that was on camera, everyone had access. I gave you that email. You'll see the city, all the individuals that were involved in this process had the email, and they could have checked that camera. If something came up, they would have been notified immediately. Additionally, when you look at the surrounding, there is no evidence that I have seen that has been brought to my attention or Joanne's attention or anyone affiliated with this process attention that individuals were involved in some kind of criminal activity, whether it's sabotaging somebody's car, vandalizing, trespassing, or whatever the case may be. And I saw one of the emails where some individual was sleeping in a car in the middle of the street by the courthouse, okay? So, you know, all that can be, you know, it just can't contribute to this. There's no clear-cut prima facie information to substantiate those individuals who are affiliated with us. But I will say this. I am absolutely concerned that they have concerns, and but moving forward, we are going to address those issues, and to the extent that from a camera standpoint, that's already in place, security, all that in place, fencing, all those other kinds of things will be in place as indicated by the architect and by staff planners. And so, you know, it's an unfortunate situation. But we're going to try to do the best we can to get along with and work with the community to ensure, one, that our information is posted. In the event that there's an issue, there'll be a posting on the building. They can get in contact with us. And also, if there are issues specifically with individuals that are residing on those premises, that will be addressed immediately. Everything from expulsion to getting in contact with the appropriate individuals that are supervising that individuals. But while they're in a program that we're going to run, and I say we because we didn't run that program, we basically housed them, then we will take immediate action. And to that end, obviously, you know, I'm sorry that individuals, but unfortunately, this is America, and we all are in a melting pot, and we all have to find a way to get along.
Thank you. Do we have a spokesperson for the opposition?
Yes.
Okay.
We are in one thought and in one wish for our neighborhood. We want safety, we want peace. A fence is not an answer. That will not keep our neighborhood safe. They have already proven the one time and the one chance they already had to run a shelter, that they are neglectful, they don't care, all they want is the money they're generating from this shelter, and that's all they care about. They don't care about cleaning up the garbage these people leave behind. They don't care about the crimes that happen on our block, on our cars, our properties. We are property owners. Our taxes are being paid. Those taxes are supposed to protect us, supposed to sustain our neighborhood, and that's what we have. So far, since that shelter closed down, there was even one death. One person passed away. That's a human life that was lost because of neglect. We don't need any of that. And we have, like I said, witnessed sexual activities on that parking lot, while the children from the middle school, from Dijon Middle School, walk on our block to go home. This is not a safe place when there's a shelter on that block. We do not need that. These people need a home. The houseless need a home. They don't need a building that they can just cover themselves and do their crimes behind the walls and in our block. We don't need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that, no, there's only one. Yeah, I think most people in here must be. Okay, I believe that would be the end of public comment.
That's correct. No more speakers.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing and bring this item back to the Planning Commission to discuss and take possible action. Does anybody need a 3-minute break before we move on? We're all ready to dig in. Okay. Anybody want to kick it off?
I can, but I'm not sure who my first question should be addressed to, but there was an issue raised that there was an unpermitted use before, and then I believe one of the project sponsors said that there was a permit. Like, how does it work? Like, is it for
So
our
does staff
city
know,
council?
let me ask if staff knows, and if not, we'll get an applicant up. Do you know if the prior uses at this site were permitted or not permitted, or both? Or
So we found a business license that was permitted for a shelter. However, when we found out that under the building code and the fire code, the building wasn't officially converted into housing or emergency sheltering. So they did have a business license, but the building didn't go through the building code
didn't go
compliance
through the
component.
permitting process?
Correct.
And then therefore it was closed? Did the city close the center then?
Yes, we brought that to the attention to the property owner and together
Can I
agreed.
ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Just a follow-up, Lena. What is the use permit we're looking at tonight? What is requiring this to be a use permit?
I believe it's the emergency shelter use.
So how did they get the business permit without a use permit in the past?
Because the business license is a tax and isn't necessarily always tied to land use. So it doesn't always comport in the sense. We do try to look and make sure that people are getting their zoning compliance review, but because it's a taxing document.
So I have a business here. I was inspected by the city to have my business. I mean, I'm just, I was inspected by the city, I was inspected by the fire department.
I can't speak to all the specifics, but it did come up later on after, we did place people into housing in this building that under the fire code and the building code, it hadn't been properly permitted.
So the business license was issued for something that hasn't been properly zoned. Then when that came to city's attention, that business license got revoked. And that's where we're here today to see if it can be approved for this use. And then if it will be, then the new business license will be issued. Is that
right? And building permits would have to be obtained to upgrade the building to meet the requirements.
Got it. Okay, and then I have few questions for the project sponsors. I don't know who wants to answer those. They're mostly about the facility, not so much engineering. Yeah, you're an architect, right? Yeah, that's not gonna be for you. Yeah,
Director Vesky, do I need to open public comment for them to speak?
Not if it's just answering questions.
Okay.
So the first question I have, I'm looking at this lease or sample lease that was provided to us. Am I correct in understanding that residents will be paying rent?
So let me tell you, that lease was required from the city and its subsidiaries, the nonprofits. That's contrary to popular belief, this wasn't any money. We didn't make any money on this at all. We were doing this to assist in closing the Castro encampment, which was a problem for the city. It had been a problem for the city for years. So so when you go back and look at the whole licensing piece, what essentially happened, what I later found out was that the planning department did not notify the fire department. So I'm not sure internally what happened. Lena could probably speak to that better than I can. And so consequently, what happened was they said, okay, even though it was zoned for for mixed use, and approved and paid for, licensed, it's all a matter of record. But what happened was the fire department was not notified. And then when the fire department became involved, then they said, wait a second, you have to have certain provisions and things of that particular nature. And that's why we're here today, because the fire department wasn't notified. In fact, they didn't think anybody was even in the building.
Well, this question in particular I have is about funding. Who is paying for this?
I don't know. Well, so Lena, so maybe you can speak to it better than I can. So Lena can speak to it better than I can, because it was her office that was responsible for the funding, I guess, and I think through HCEB, I guess, or I'm not sure.
I believe the question is, moving forward, how will you fund the project and
okay,
how will you operate it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. You said, how did it get funded? So that would be through the state subsidiary, GEO.
So the state will issue a grant?
No, so basically what happens is that there is a contract with GEO that we already have, and they will basically pay us for the individuals that will be coming in.
Okay. And the residents, what kind of services will they be getting?
Vocational rehabilitation type services, transitional type services, and also we're going to assist them with finding permanent housing.
Well, let's talk about transitional. So what services will someone with mental health issues be getting in the facility?
Well, most of the individuals coming, as far as mental health, so again, depending on what happens, we'll defer a lot of that to the state, who's going to be referring the clients. And a lot of times they already have services in place, whether it's being services through Social Security, through county mental health, or through the state CDCR system.
So just to clarify, that's none at the facility, correct?
I'm sorry, it's non what?
It's no services, there is no mental health services at this facility will be provided.
We do have a clinician. Dr. Jackson is a clinician, and he will be at the facility.
Clinician, what do they do?
He's a psych. He's a psychologist. Psychologist, yes.
So one person, 24/7?
Well, he's on call 24/7, yes.
On call, okay.
Mm-hmm.
How about substance dependency? What kind of services will tenants be getting for that?
Well, again, that's one of the services that Dr. Jackson will provide is substance abuse, because there will be substance abuse classes and interventions. And so if an individual is needed detox services, then they wouldn't be allowed at the facility, because we're not a detox facility.
So it is expected that none of the residents will have substance dependency issues?
Again, it may be acute, but in terms of someone having a habitual problem, then they wouldn't be, that facility would not be designed for them.
So will not be accepting people with substance
That is correct.
And then security, there were some items were mentioned, like fencing, cameras. How about the issues raised by the neighbors?
Yeah, so the cameras have already been up, and the reason why I provided you that email is because not only us, but everyone involved in that process, from the nonprofit organizations that were charged with housing navigation to the city folks, they all had access to the cameras. Okay, if there was an issue or something that came on camera, they would have access, or if there's something that obviously we felt like they needed to see, we would then go ahead and make a referral, make sure that they saw the video.
If I'm understanding it correctly, the cameras are primarily for the security of the facility, not for the neighborhood.
Well, the cameras expand outside the building, so the parking lot that you see, the cameras cover that all the way across the street and partially down the street to cover the neighbor's house. And so if anything happened within 3 or 4 houses to the right of the property or to the left of the property down the street, we would be able to see that on the cameras that would be shining down or at least recording down Vissel.
Will there be security on site?
Yes.
How
There'll be
many?
24-hour coverage,
Uh,
staff coverage.
Will there be patrol?
Patrol in what sense?
Like a security office and patrol in the facility 24/7?
Well, the staff would be the security. Staff would be security. And so when you start talking about getting into issues of violence and things like that, then that's going to be reserved for the police. The police will be called. And obviously, if it's anything on camera, then you'll have clear-cut prima facie information by way of video to show the reports in the event that there's some kind of report that needs to be made. The other thing is that if individuals on parole or on probation, their probation officers will be called or parole agents will be called. We also invite the prospective individuals to come and spend time during the day as well. And we're going to have an office set up for them.
No, I understand the PRCS and parole system. I'm more concerned with the issues raised by a lot of neighbors, right?
Yeah, I understand. We're concerned too. Yeah, absolutely.
and,
We don't want neighbors to be affected by that. But you can see what's happening. You know, anybody black needs to go back to Africa, as was stated here today. Okay, so I'm just sorry, but I think that's very offensive.
I think I certainly would be, but we don't need to continue to.
Yeah, no, I understand.
delay
I understand.
those.
I'm just saying you understand what we're dealing with, though, right? We're taxpayers too. We open up a legitimate business, okay? And unfortunately, there were some issues that came about, no fault of our own, and now we're going through this situation. So, do we feel happy about it? Absolutely not. But moving forward, I'm going to tell you, we're going to address any issues that happen in and around the neighborhood to the extent that we can. We don't want people to be going through this. I don't want my kids to go through this. I certainly want nobody else's kids. I don't care what color they are.
I'm going to switch to another commissioner. Thank you.
I'm a little confused because you've mentioned the Castro situation a number of times.
Yes.
And then you're talking about probation and parole and a contract with the state. So what is it?
Well, there are two things.
Yeah.
The Castro encampment was the individuals who came and were occupying that facility, and then because Lena can speak to that because I think they were on a certain time frame to remove people from the Castro encampment, and I'm not sure what that time frame was. But then when we were approached and asked to help out, we did. Okay. But our plan was to work with the population, the CDCR population, and a probation population. We haven't done that yet. The individuals that were there came from the Castro encampment, okay? So that's why you have kind of a bifurcation, if you will. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, if I could. I have a question for staff. I'm not sure if I have.
If we can stop speaking from the audience, it's difficult.
I'm sorry,
to hear.
Commissioner, I didn't hear what you said,
I have
sir.
a couple of questions for staff, so you can, if you would like to sit down again, you
Yeah,
can.
okay, sure.
And if we
All right.
need you, we'll call you back
Yeah,
up.
just responding to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. How many shelters like this do we have currently operating in Richmond?
So right now, the major shelters, we have the Brookside Shelter, which is over on Brookside, North Richmond area, and that's managed through the county system. We have the Bay Area Rescue Mission, including their facility for women and children, and that is on McDonald near 1st and 2nd Street. We also have GRIP, the Greater Richmond Interfaith program, and that's over by 22nd Street.
And did all of these go through the conditional use permit process that we're doing now?
Well, if some of the, well, maybe I can't recall, but they have gone through the use permit process. Not all of them. I think some of them have predated the requirement. But I know the most recent built shelter was the facility at the Bay Area Rescue Mission for women and children, and that went through design review as well as the use permit with the
And
commission.
are any of these in a similar situation or setting that they're in embedded inside of a residential area with a school nearby. Is that happening in any others that you're aware of?
The Brookside is not. I think the Bay Area Rescue Mission, there are residential uses south of the use. I can't think of the nearest school. Would be Peary's, and that's probably a few blocks away north. Lincoln? Okay. Yeah, Lincoln is near the Greenway and probably 6th or 7th Street.
And have you had similar problems at any of these as we're hearing about tonight? Or is this something went wrong at this one, perhaps?
You know, I can't speak to all of those complaints because they don't all come to me. I mean, as you heard this
Right.
evening, they're most likely going to the police department. We are getting a lot of complaints both around GRIP and the Bay Area Rescue Mission around just general encampments, loitering, and, you know, challenges that they're having at nearby parks like Nevin Park. But, you know, we usually work
Okay,
with
and I don't know if this
operators.
is a question for you, Director, or for our city attorney, but would, if for approval of this, we have conditions that have to be met. If we chose to deny this, are there also conditions that have to be written up as the basis for a denial? Or can we just, because
Well,
it's
we
a
would
conditional
definitely
use?
need to revise the findings and get some direction from the commission in terms of which findings you believe cannot be met, and is the basis for the denial. But Pam, I don't know if you would like to add or elaborate further.
Yes, emergency shelters under recent California law have been elevated to the same level as affordable housing projects, which are typically now expedited and receive special consideration. So to the extent that you actually want to approve this, we do have conditions of approval. And one of the conditions that we are still looking through, and I don't think has been agreed upon, is the condition related to the maximum number of beds. Now, under state law, under Government Code Section 65583, emergency shelters are beholden to specific written objective standards that are enumerated by the city in the city's code. And so we have to look through that to make sure that all of the standards that we are imposing meet the written objective criteria. And so the parking issue, I think, is one, and the maximum beds is another one. To go to your point about those conditions, we do have to look through them. So I think at this point, if you're considering approval, I don't think at this point we can actually meet the requirements of approval. So it would need to be continued to finalize those conditions with respect to those two aspects that I just talked about. On the other hand, if you do want to deny the project, because it's an emergency shelter, it has to meet specific findings under state law because of the need for emergency shelters and other types of housing in the state. That required finding is basically that you have to find that the emergency shelter would have specific adverse impacts on the public health and safety of the community or the city, and that there's no feasible method to mitigate those adverse impacts to render the project financially infeasible. So we would have to go back to review the findings and make sure that it meets that very high threshold of a specific adverse impact and there's no feasible method of mitigation. So if we're looking at safety issues, would the security personnel, would the on-site and on-call psychologists, would the cameras, would those be adequate measures to mitigate those harms? If not, then you can potentially deny it, but we would have to make specific findings and we would have to get additional facts and evidence on that. So in that sense, we would also need to continue this. So either way, I think based on the hearing and the facts that have been presented to you tonight, the best course of action would be to continue one way or the other. Obviously, it would be within your pleasure to determine what that would be.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question.
It did, and I guess what struck me throughout this process is that the problems that the neighborhood is raising are not happening on the site. And the project, as great as it may be designed, really can't control the residents of their facility once they're off the site. They have no authority to police their residents when they're on a sidewalk, as I understand it. If I'm wrong, let me know. I mean, but basically, they manage those residents when they're in the facility. When they're out of the facility, they're on their own. And from what I heard tonight, I mean, this is not a place where those impacts can readily be managed, that we can assure the safety that the neighborhood is looking for. That's my take on this. And I mean, I would like, I know we probably have more discussion, but that's what I've come to the conclusion that we really need to make findings for denials. That's where I'm at. So other people?
I just would like the attorney, could you share that precise name of the state law that you just referred to for emergency housing?
Sure. There's two aspects to that. The first aspect I was talking about are the conditions of approval, and all emergency shelters. Oh, for the denial?
Please, just give me the name of the code. What's the code, the exact name of the code, or the letters in the code in the state law? I'm good at reading state law.
8B, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
That's all I'm looking
written
for.
objectives, two codes. Written objective standards, government code 65583. The denial findings, government code section 65589.5.
Wait,
Subdivision
655.
D.
Wait,
Government code
655.
65589.5.
Got it.
Subdivision D, subdivision paragraph 2.
Thank you.
You must have dealt with this before.
I have, and 65589.5 is extremely long. So when you go look it up, it's going to take a while to read it.
Thank you. We may have other questions for you. I'm not sure. Anybody else have a comment or question?
I guess I will just throw out a finding that I'd like the commission to discuss. Under the proposed resolution, it includes findings, and staff has written that it satisfies these findings. And the one I want to go to is finding number 2.
What page are you
on? I don't know. 2 of 7.
It's in the resolution?
Yeah. The location, size, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed use will be compatible with and will not adversely affect the livability or appropriate development of abutting properties in the surrounding neighborhood. So it seems to me there's room for interpretation to say that this facility may adversely affect the livability or appropriate development. I think the commission gets stuck because we have a tremendous need for shelters in this city. And if you could make this finding here, you could probably make this finding everywhere. So I don't know how we can really logically move forward without saying that there's never going to be shelters. I mean, maybe it's a case by case, and maybe there's a different neighborhood that a shelter would be more appropriate in, but it's a matter of degree, right? So anyways, I'm opening that for discussion.
Thanks, that's helpful. I agree with you. It's really, if we were to find that this finding cannot be made and therefore the project should be denied, you know, is it the specifics of this neighborhood that it's surrounded by, immediately by residential on at least one side, if not two, I'm not quite sure from the discussion. And that what really concerns me is the school and the school kids walking on the street. I think of other projects like marijuana dispensaries and alcohol dispensaries and a lot of other uses. They have restrictions on proximity to schools and other uses like that. You know, apparently there is no such requirement right now in Richmond, at least, for proximity to sensitive uses. And I think, while that may be a shortcoming in our current policies and whatnot, it potentially is a reason to say, you know, we're not ready for this one because we can't assure the safety of those individuals walking down the sidewalk to and from school and so forth. That's probably one of my, if not the biggest, one of my biggest concerns regarding approval or denial of this is the impact on school children.
I think we should continue.
Yeah, so we're going to, we need to continue. Do we want to continue with directions to staff, whether to proceed with trying to figure out how to approve it by clearing up the questions that the city attorney pointed out are still not resolved, or do we want to give staff direction that we're seeking basis for denial? And if we go that way, do you need input from us tonight, or can we somehow get that to you some other way that's permissible under the Brown Act?
If I could make a recommendation, because if you are going to move forward with denial, you have to do so with the specific finding that there's an adverse impact on public health and safety, but also that you can't mitigate that, enough to the extent that it would still render the project financially feasible for the applicant. I think what the best move would be right now is to continue this hearing and the process and allow the city to work with the applicant to see, hey, do we need 2 security guards that are certified with the state of California as bona fide security services? Do we need 3? Do they need to patrol in shifts at 24/7? Do we need to have them placed at every corner? What does that look like for you? How would that impact the finances on the bottom line? Would that ensure the safety of the neighborhood to always have that private patrol around, not just with the interior, but with the surrounding area that could potentially just act as a deterrent for criminal activity?
But
those types of proposals and options would be something that we'd want to explore and see. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I think we would at least have to take that step first and consider other types of safety concerns and potential solutions that we could work towards to ensure the safety of the surrounding neighborhoods and the children in the area.
And as we might come up with such conditions, additional, well, my hair is really getting messy, conditions that, more guards, all this kind of stuff that you just described, does that begin to infringe upon the civil rights of the tenants of the shelter? Are we then going to go in the other direction and get challenged that you're taking away these people's right to have a place to live? I guess I'm wondering, would that be a counter argument that we would have to consider as we come up with any conditions of denial?
Right, that's certainly a consideration, where they're placed, where they can patrol, what that looks like. Same thing with camera placements. They have the same type of effect potentially. So those are things that we would definitely be looking into, and all the legal issues that result from these options.
Now, you mentioned previously that there's an urgency under the state law. So my question is, are we up against a timeline by which we would need to work with staff to come up with findings if either the ones you're talking about for approval or the ones we're contemplating for denial? Is there a state-imposed deadline?
Not specifically for emergency shelters. I think there was a carve out for them, but to the extent that they have the same type of almost like a streamlined approval process in the sense that you can only impose certain objective standards, you can only deny them for a specific finding. Those are the same types of elevated concern and level of urgency there is for emergency shelters. With affordable housing projects, I think you're limited to like 5 public hearings. I don't think that specifically applies here, but we do, want to be able to work expeditiously with them, but there's no specific time frame that would be imposed on us.
Thank you.
I mean, I have to expect that almost no matter what we say, it will be appealed to City Council. So I think that probably fast action is appropriate to let the project take its course. I don't know that that's the case, but it seems likely. I will say for myself, I just have this thought that as an example, I know GRIP, and I've volunteered for GRIP, and I think it's a incredible organization that seems very well run and is quite responsive. And I'm just thinking about this situation where there was a shelter, and it sounds like it was not. It was not a great environment for maybe even the residents, but also the shelter residents too. I don't know, but it seems like it was not a positive situation. And so thinking about myself, I would be much more predisposed to consider approval if there was a sense that there was a professional management company that had a good track record that was involved in this shelter. I don't know how that could happen, but I'm just stating what my opinion is.
Okay. Well, we've got 2 opinions on the table. Do we have any more?
My opinion is we should continue this.
Yeah, we have
I
to.
want to read that code.
We're going to continue it, but I would think we have to give, maybe we don't. I think we have to give staff direction which way we're leaning for the continuance. But if we don't have to give you any direction, then it would come back. And at that next meeting, we would be able to give that direction. So that would then again get continued, and it would be a 3rd meeting at which action would be taken. That's the other option. Is that correct?
That is a viable option, and that probably is what is going to happen. And I say this simply because I think because this will likely be appealed, like the commissioner said, we do have to look at all the options with respect to what we can do to ensure that this is least impactful towards the community, what additional conditions would be viable. And if they're not, these are the other options. These are the additional facts with respect to public health and safety concerns, so that they're presented in front of you so that you can make a more educated decision once we come back with this. So I do think it will likely end up being continued another time for whatever decision you decide to do. But I think for your second hearing, I believe we do have enough information and direction from the commission to provide additional information, additional conditions, and discuss with the applicant what the options are. I don't know if Lena wants to add any more.
Council, I have a question. So it seems that it's going to be upon us to make a factual findings, but can your office prepare in writing the standard that we have to follow?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. By the next meeting.
We'll include that as part of the next meeting.
Thank you.
Did you have a comment, Gay? All right, then, in terms of a continuance, what amount of time would staff think they are going to need before they can address issues with the applicant, possibly with the neighborhood, and come back with the materials that'll help us jump left or jump right.
I would assume we need at least a month. I think it's too soon for your next, we actually just did the noticing for the June 20th meeting. So.
How about the second meeting in July?
Yeah, because I think July 4th is our Thursday, so there is no meeting. So we can continue the item to July 18th.
Okay, whoop. All right, do I hear a motion to continue this item to the July 18th Planning Commission meeting?
I motion we continue this item to July 18th.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right.
something? I'm sorry, she wanna say something.
I'm sorry, the public comment is closed. The public comment is closed, I'm sorry. So can we take a vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Harrison?
Yes.
Commissioner Brubaker?
Yes.
Commissioner He?
Yes.
Commissioner Timmons?
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes to hold the item over to the 7/18 meeting.
Okay, then this item will be coming back on July 18th. Thank you all for being here tonight. It was an amazing meeting. We have never had one like this since I've been on the commission, so I really appreciate all the input from the applicants and from the neighborhood. Okay, I think at this point we would just have staff and commissioner comments, and then we'll be done. Thank you all for coming.
So, just excited to introduce one of our new planners and, appreciate Matt for attending this meeting with us. And so, but we have no other comments from staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any commissioners have comments for the better, whatever that is, the good of the whole or whatever?
I have a question. We're supposed to do elections, and it is now June, right? Is that the time to do it?
Yeah,
Do we
yes.
have to notice it?
So typically, elections are held in July.
July, okay.
And so I think from my understanding from our planning manager, Mr. Rojas, there was a subcommittee that was formed, but
Right.
deferring the election, so possibly for the meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll plan that.
Okay. I don't have any comments.
Okay, good. Well, I think then at this point with the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.